Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. All right, friends. This evening, as I said earlier, I wasn't quite sure what to cover. Many of you know, I don't have just one set of reflections that I'm going through. If I did, maybe it would have been easier to just put my finger on, oh, this is a Dhamma topic I've been thinking a lot about lately, and I can speak on that, and maybe be able to reference some suttas and be able to offer useful information. But I've been doing a sort of shotgun approach and doing 4 different contemplations every day, so that I'm having a well-rounded practice. And these practices being the reflection on the unattractive nature of the body, the nature of friendliness, goodwill, metta, meditation on the breath, on Uposatha, and reflection, developing the perception of impermanence, and doing a bit of these each day, and just letting them gather their own momentum. But this has left me in a spot today where it's like, wow, I don't have anything like big and profound. I've been getting all kinds of wonderful insights by dedicating regular, consistent practice to these. But I wasn't sure what to talk about. So I decided, why not talk about the sutta that led to me having the idea to do such a practice. That sutta being the Meghiya Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, to Meghiya. And this sutta, I really should look up the number, but if somebody wants to do that for me right now, that'd be great. And I can just, it gets added seamlessly to the recording. This sutta has a funny story kind of built into it, but also an insight into the time of the Buddha. And we might, we have statues, pictures, portraits, all sorts of images of the Buddha. It's very easy to think of the Buddha as this history-changing religious leader, at millions of students and hundreds of millions throughout the course of the last 2,600 years. But at the time of this sutta, the Buddha was, relatively unknown. And he was traveling on his own. And as it might be funny to think about, but most of his early students were solitary ascetics. And he taught them, and because they had been meditating and renouncing most of their adult lives, they got it very quickly, and then they went off to do their meditations or to be happily enlightened, and they didn't need him anymore. And so at this point in time, he didn't have this long caravan of students that were traveling with him at all times, like he did in the later years. It was just him and one other monk. And this other monk was a newer monk, Meghiya, who had come in out of faith, hearing the teachings of the Buddha. He wasn't one of these long-time grizzled, scraggly bearded ascetics, but he was fresh, and he was enthusiastic, and he was inspired by a Dhamma talk, and so he joined the sangha. And as it were, the Buddha thought it'd be quite useful that he was the Buddha's attendant. And in the early years, the Buddha had a particular karma of not very great attendants who, in various ways, had some misadventures. And Meghiya was no different. So in this particular sutta is a time when the Buddha and the Meghiya are all alone meditating outside of this particular village. And Meghiya asked to go into the village for alms. And maybe the Buddha was fasting that day or something. And Meghiya goes alone. And on his way, he says this beautiful little grove, and you can imagine the scenario. Thank you. Anguttara Nikaya 9.3 to Meghiya. It might show up somewhere else, but I believe you. Yeah, I would not be surprised if it's in more than one spot. Because yes, some of the anecdotes about the Buddha and his attendants and all these things, they show up in more than one place. Yeah, so Meghiya sees this little grove, and you've probably seen this on the cover of Buddha Dhamma magazine or Tricycle or something, some meditator on a beautiful cliff, yeah, or in the forest, surrounded by, bamboo and this perfect Zen garden stream running by them. And Meghiya sees one of these places and he thinks, that would be the perfect place for striving, that delightful little grove. I should go get my alms food, and then I should get permission to come back here and meditate. And surely striving in such a conducive environment, diligent, ardent, and resolute, I will attain nibbana. And so he goes and he gets his alms food, and then he does some walking meditation to digest. And he goes back to the Buddha and he says, "Oh Lord, may I have permission to take leave and go meditate in this grove, be ardent, diligent, and resolute?" And the Buddha says, yeah, why don't we're all alone and I have no one else to sort of attend on me. Why don't you just wait until another monk comes by to take over, and then you can go? And Meghiya once, twice, three times asked the Buddha if he can go. And finally, finally Meghiya says, Venerable Sir, the Tathagata, the Buddha, the Supremely Enlightened Buddha, has already done all his work. He's already attained all of those things that can be attained. He has nothing left to do. But I have more left to do, more left to see with true wisdom. So therefore, may I get leave to go and strive? And the Buddha's like, Meghiya, so you got me. You talk about striving, and how could I say no to such a request? So go, good luck. Yeah. And that was the setup for basically Meghiya allowing this very normal situation to work its way into the Pali Canon, which has survived through this lineage of being passed on orally for hundreds of years and then written down for millennia. He goes, and as soon as he sits down, his mind is awash with sensual desire, ill will, and cruelty. Yeah, there's these wrong intentions, these wrong thoughts, and he's a mess. Basically, the hindrances, take him for a ride all day long. It sounds pretty familiar, right? And at the end of the day, he kind of gathers himself up, and he's like, "Wow, that was a complete waste of time." And he goes slinking back to the Buddha. And he has, the Buddha, I imagine it's like, "So, Meghiya, how did your meditation go?" And, in the commentaries, when, the Buddha asks these things, it says, knowing the Tathagata asks. And it's sort of like the Buddha already knows how it went, but it's useful in terms of rhetoric for him to ask the question anyway. And Meghiya goes, "Oh, it was terrible. I couldn't believe it. How amazing that I go to this wonderful, conducive environment, so intent on meditation and on liberating myself. And my mind is just awash in thoughts of sensual desire, ill will, and cruelty." And the Buddha said, "So it is, so it is." And you kind of get that this is the setup. And the Buddha gives Meghiya some advice. And it sets up what came before. So the Buddha is kind of showing, like, he wasn't just saying, like, "Look, it would really inconvenience me, Meghiya, if you left right now. I wouldn't have anybody to, look after me and refill the water pitcher and kind of, sweep around here. That wasn't why he was saying, maybe don't go off and do this just now, but that the Buddha, maybe we can take from context that he sensed that Meghiya wasn't really ready to be on his own yet. He really hadn't set up all of the supportive conditions to really get the most out of his meditation. And so in this particular instance, the Buddha says, it is sometimes the case when a meditator on, looking at their mind, they see that their mind is not yet ripe, is not yet mature. And that's the word the Buddha actually uses, this word that means maturing or ripening, like you would use for fruit or something. And seeing thus, there are some conditions that they might look to develop to help lead to their mind coming to maturity, coming to ripening. And going back and reading this, and I've gone back and read this many times, and in fact, it was completely out of the blue that I decided this vasa, maybe I should just, yeah, this is never a bad idea. Maybe I should do some of these meditations. But going back to the sutta and rereading this advice that comes before, I didn't say, oh yeah, no, I got that. That check. But I said, this is really always good. These thoughts are something always useful to recollect, to reflect on. Yeah. These are 5 things that it occurred to me. I was just talking with our friend yesterday that only half of our practice necessarily, because of the nature of the thinking mind, is related to those things that we are doing. We are pointing the mind at something and saying, I am focusing on this. I'm going to get insight on this. I'm going to develop this. That the way that the mind works, it's almost as if the mind is set up with a failsafe to keep us from getting stuck on one thing and not leaving it. That when we point the mind at something, the equal and opposite reaction is that our mind then has to let go and reflect on that thing. We call this vitaka and vichara. And this is the very nature of our thinking mind, the pointing, attentive, thinking part of our mind that creates these verbalized stream of consciousness thoughts that are always kind of like chattering up here. That only half of that is, I want to think about this. I want to focus on this. I want to attend to this. And the whole other half is, where are we? What are we doing? What are the conditions? And this is what makes up this passive part of our mind that kind of absorbs the situation. And it's really that second part which can get the insights. Yeah, we can't learn what we haven't learned yet. We can't discover what we haven't discovered by looking at something that we're intending to look at. It's one of these paradoxes, right? If we're looking at that thing, then we had the thought, like, I need to look at that thing, which means we're already deciding, like, there's that thing is there and looking at it. It's when we kind of let go and zoom back that we see, oh yeah, that's what this thing really is. And we have that insight with this deeper knowledge of it. And it's the same with our practice. So we have these things, and those 4 meditations I described, those are the active things. It was said these are always effective to look at the unattractiveness of the body, to look at metta, to look at developing anapanasati, to look at developing the perception of impermanence. These are always the right things for developing your mind. Before that, he said there are these passive things that you could develop. And some of them sound a little kind of active, but when you think about it, they're things that, what if we could get a condition in place? And just by virtue of having that condition in place, we have these positive influences on our mind that kind of leads us in the direction of getting wiser, getting more settled, getting more informed, getting more concentrated. Yeah. And the first of these things is the Buddha says, Meghiya, you should develop good friends, good associations, yeah, good companions. And it's like, this comes up actually a bunch of places in the suttas, right? And you've probably all heard the word kalyana mitta, yeah? This is what beautiful friendship. And it's the word the Buddha uses specifically for that friendship that's between people who are interested in the path, developing the path, attain to the path, yeah? Those who have liberation as their goal, but also all of the requisite wholesome states that lead to liberation as their goal. Yeah, these are worthy people to develop an association with. The Buddha said, even if you don't get it, even if you're not yet ripe, even if you've still got plenty of delusion, you know, throwing you off course over and over again, just cultivate an association with people who are at least not in the same way deluded as you, but maybe even a little less deluded. Yeah. Maybe they can help shine some light in some of the things you're doing, or help point you in the right direction from time to time, or at the very least stop you from making some really obvious overt mistakes like the Buddha was trying to do for Meghiya. If he wasn't so diligent, ardent, and resolute and all of that. And this is the first thing that one can develop, cultivate. And it's a very passive thing. Yeah, as you start hanging out with good people, and you're not going to be like, okay, free me, liberate me, like enlighten me. It doesn't work that way. Even the Buddha couldn't do that for people. But just by hanging around them, you get to hear the Dhamma, you get to talk about things, you get good behavior modeled. This is a very helpful condition. Yeah. And the second one is of good morality. And specifically for monastics, the Buddha says one dwells restrained by the Vinaya, the Patimokkha code, which is the code of conduct for monks. Another thing is, though he was talking to Meghiya, who was a monk, interestingly, at the time, there actually wasn't a Patimokkha code. It wasn't codified yet. All the monks just kind of knew what to do and kind of checked in with each other. It's like, okay, this is what we do, and this is what we don't do this. So this was probably interpreted a bit and reframed later. Buddha probably didn't use exactly these words at the time, but the idea of precepts were there, yeah, and even people who weren't Buddhist had an understanding of what samanas, this class of wandering ascetics, what sort of morality they kept to, all the more for the lay people that the Buddha was teaching. He gave them very clear guidelines. This is exactly what you should try to live by. And again, at first, these things seem like very active things. Yeah, I'm going to keep the precepts. I'm going to defend the precepts. I'm going to set up these boundaries that I will not transgress. But I think all of you who've done this to any degree, that's just like the startup costs. That's just like the getting the ball rolling. And then once you've done that a little bit, it's very passive. Yeah. All you have to do is not break them, which is not really a doing. Yeah. It's just a preventing yourself from doing. Is it just staying on, the straight path and the peaceful path, the beneficial path. The more you get these, the more you start to realize, this is just a better way to live. It's not even a thou shalt, from the heavens written on stone tablets, like, this is what you're supposed to be doing, don't transgress this. It's like, hey, if you want things to go better for you, just try not to do these really overtly damaging, harmful things. Yeah. And even for some of us, taking the 8 precepts, these even more subtle, like damaging or just time wasting things or money wasting things that we can cut out of our lives. Yeah. And this is a healthy condition. And once you've got it, things will get better, even without direct applied effort. And the third one is, I think, very lovely. The Buddha says, one easily gets to take part in talk on self-effacement, that talk which goes right to the heart. Yeah? And we self-effacement is not something we really use in common speech. Yeah, it's one of these things about translating the suttas. But it's talk. We do use in common parlance. We say things like the ego. We say selfishness, self-centeredness. Yeah, say being self-absorbed and being greedy, being malcontent, all of these things. And this is what this means, getting to hear talk on the opposite of that, and hear talk on letting go, on being friendly, being accepting, talk on not being self-centered, on not even like letting go of our sense of self, and doing what is just beneficial for everybody involved. Yeah, and just how where could we go? What could we do? Where could we where could we live? What message boards could we check out where we will often get to hear this beautiful talk on self-effacement, on letting go of the ego? And all of you are here now because that happened, right? You heard it and you're like, I need to hear more of this. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. I've talked to somebody who is not Buddhist, who has had no exposure to Buddhism, and you say something like that, like, it's just easier to let go, or it's easier to not have an opinion. It's easier to not take a stance on something. It's much more peaceful. I don't need to have an opinion on that. I'd rather just get along with everybody. And they're like, yeah, I should write that on my refrigerator and see that every morning when I go to get the cereal for, milk for my cereal. Yeah. And then that is what it's like. Yeah. What would be good for us to hear? What is the sort of thing like we would, I got like if we had a calendar where every day we like, oh, what day is it? Oh yeah, practice self-effacement and practice letting go, practice non-attachment. That's what I need to do. It's that kind of day. How can we set ourselves up that we're getting that kind of talk? And I'll give you a little hint now. It's sort of like the number 6 out of this 5-part list. And the fourth one is, one lives with their energy aroused for the abandoning of unwholesome states and the cultivating of wholesome states. It's basically one has the 4 right efforts. But again, how is this a passive thing? Well, can you set yourself up so that when there comes a time when you could be practicing the Dhamma, when you could be trying to let go or be friendly or be unattached or just not have an opinion, not plant your feet about something, that you have the energy to do so? Yeah. And this is what those 8 precepts are all about. Yeah. Those who are leading very busy lives, very active lives, very stimulated lives, when they get home at the end of the day, they just kind of they just want to tune out. Yeah. You tell them, okay, now it's time to practice meditation. Now is the time to practice letting go, and going, thinking back through your day and all the things that you could develop and really learn from. And they're like, no, I'm so tired. I just wanna tune out. Yeah. Just leave me alone. How can you set up your life in such a way that when these opportunities come up, you do have the energy to do so? And that's actually kind of a passive thing. Yeah. Meghiya wasn't doing so bad when he saw that grove, he was ready to go. Yeah. So this one was kind of, well, was already there. He was already living in a way that really inspired him and engaged him. And that can be an interesting reflection. Yeah. Could I live in a way that I do get inspired? Now, I do put the little note on my refrigerator, and when I walk by, I don't just go, yeah, that's a good idea, but I go, oh, wow, I'm going to do that today. Yeah. Because we have the energy in place. Yeah. We've made it a habit. We've made it a good habit and gotten some momentum behind it. And the final one, this is kind of, is a good idea, is to be wise. Yeah. But specifically, yeah, it's sort of like, yeah, duh. Yeah, yes, I'd love to be more wise. And then this would all go a lot easier. Yeah. But Meghiya had already, even being young and enthusiastic, he already had quite a measure of wisdom. Yeah. It's just that this is a great condition for more wisdom to develop, but a specific wisdom, the wisdom that sees the arising and passing away of things. Yeah. And that's a very particular kind of wisdom. And it often, as we're developing all of our various meditations and the things we want to cultivate, and the loving kindness and the unattractiveness of the body, and focusing on the breath so that we can still our thoughts. Yeah, are we reminding ourselves, arising and passing away, arising and passing away? This too shall pass. This too shall pass. And that is a kind of core thing that, if nothing else, we would want to have that there. Yeah. We want to remember that. And if Meghiya remembered that, then, once he sat down in that nice little grove and he's all of these crazy hindrances arising, he might have said, okay, that's in there too. But you know what? This too shall pass. So I'm not gonna get spun out. I'm gonna keep mindfulness. I'm gonna stay with it, and we'll see how long they last. Yeah. Um, it sounds like he's like, oh, I thought this was gonna be easy. I thought energy, nice little grove, sitting posture, enlightenment. It wasn't that easy. But actually, when you do cultivate this kind of wisdom that sees this too shall pass, arising, ceasing, things do become a little easier. Yeah. They do have this right context. And as I said, there's a kind of hint at how you set these things up in your life. And the Buddha gives it as a sort of addendum to this list of five, by saying, when one has good friends, which is number one, then one is likely to keep the precepts. Yeah, it's a sort of cheat. It's actually, they're not necessarily all equal, they're all good. But even if you don't have the wisdom that sees arising and passing away, yeah, even if you don't yet have undaunted energy, even if you don't yet, often get to take part in Dhamma conversations, even if your precepts are not so great when you're on your own, if you are hanging out with good people, wholesome people, people who are interested in self-effacement and Dhamma and letting go and friendliness and all of these things, then just by association, you will be exposed to these things. And when you are in a weaker state, you'll have somebody there who's modeling, the right thing that you can do. It doesn't always have to be on you. Yeah. And yeah, as I said, going back and read, and that's it. That's the whole thing. Basically, the Buddha's like, Meghiya, hang around me and you'll be okay. You'll trust me that it won't always be like it was in that grove. Yeah. You've got a lot of good things going for you, and you just need to see that. And you just need to really develop those things. And when you've got those, down, then you can really expect that your mind is going to ripen, is going to mature, and that you will reach a point when you can go off on your own and it'll work. Yeah, meditation will flow, insights will come. Yeah. And coming back and reading this, even after having read it so many times, it's just one of those suttas where you really go, yeah, yeah, those are good things. And so this is what I offer you tonight. And again, you might have come across this sutta in your own wanderings. You may have heard me talk about it, as I did a few weeks ago, or maybe it just sounds very rudimentary. But I think the very nature of it is to say it's like you can't go wrong. by hearing it again and getting reminded. It's like this: if things are going good for you, if you feel like, yeah, check. If you feel like I'm really making progress and I don't need anybody to tell me to do it, I'm just doing it, then hearing these things should be, well, that's why. Yeah. Which I fulfilled some criteria. I got myself in a good place. And even when I wasn't focused, I was still developing because of where I set myself up. Like the momentum I got, the sort of scenario I had set for myself for development. And yeah, so on this Uposatha night, I offer this for your reflection, and I hope that they were good words, wholesome words that went straight to the heart. And if not, yeah, like I said, there will be another new moon, full moon gathering, and maybe then we'll have another wonderful Dhamma topic to discuss. Yeah. So with that, may you be well. May your practice go well. And as always, it's a joy to practice together with Kalyana Mitta.